So let's go ahead and start looking at our cow's eye. We're going to be dissecting the cow's eye. We can already see a few of the structures that we've learned about. First up, a lot of this white portion along the side is supposed to be sclera. It's a little bit obscured. When we look at our sclera, one of the things that we notice is it's covered in some substances. And so it has right here, it has fat, right? It also has some muscle attached to it. If we look at the cow's eye, the fat and the muscle both serve an important function. First up, the fat is going to help cushion the eye. It helps protect the eye, along with the bony orbits and the eyelashes and the eyelids and all the stuff that's there to protect the eye. The muscle is there to move the eye. And so a cow has 4 different muscles. A cow is going to be able to move their eye with these 4 muscles to the left, the right, up, and down. Humans actually have 2 additional muscles, which allow clockwise and counterclockwise movements, which is why you'll never see a cow roll their eyes. There are no sarcastic cows. The first thing that we're going to be doing with our cow's eye is we actually have to remove a lot of this fat and muscle. It does take a little bit of elbow grease. So when you start doing this, again, just start cutting. Remember that we talked before that the sclera is going to be a nice hard protective coating, so don't worry too much about cutting too deep and getting through that sclera, because you will very quickly notice that it's not quite so easy. You will be using your scissors. If your scissors aren't working correctly, then talk with me and I will also be walking around and helping. For the muscle and all that kind of stuff, don't throw that out. Leave it to the side of your bin. We do need to properly dispose of this. All right, so this is the cow's eye after a lot of that fat and muscle has been cut away. We haven't cut away all of it. One of the things you'll notice is that I left some of the fat and muscle on. It doesn't matter too much. I also left on the optic nerve. And so this is going to take all the information from those photoreceptors in the back of the eye back to the brain. You can see it's fairly large. Let's say maybe about 7 or 8 millimeters, almost the size of a pencil, but not quite for this guy. We will be looking at this as well again later. Kind of looking at our eye, we have a couple of structures. Again, we have that sclera that was covered by that fat and muscle, a little bit more visible. Remember, that's white and fibrous and there to protect it. The cornea right here should normally be clear, but we can definitely see that it has taken on a more grayish or cloudy appearance, and this has to do with preservation after death. If the cow were alive, obviously this would be clear and you'd be able to see the iris underneath. Now, we are going to hold off on cutting the cornea for a little bit because we want to try to preserve the iris underneath so we can see it a little bit better when we open up the eye. What we're going to do next is we are going to cut open the eye through the sclera. So we're going to use our scissors. This is going to be one of the more difficult portions of the lab. I know some of you guys probably had a little bit of an issue with that. When you guys are cutting through the sclera, do be careful to not hurt yourself. One of the things that I do is I wrap my hand around the eye, kind of leaving a lot open at the back so I don't necessarily hurt myself, and then I try and work my scissors into the sclera. Don't worry too much about hurting the cow's eye. If that doesn't quite work, you can start cutting into the sclera and trying to use the sharp point of your scissors to create a weak point into the eye. If you guys notice any liquid seeping out, then you've gone pretty far, all right? Now, if you need help with this step, please let me know. But once we cut into the eye, and let's see if I can do this nicely for you guys. Sometimes twisting motions help. One of the reasons I like to cover it up is because I'm not quite aiming at myself in case there's a little bit of splatter. And you guys can see there's still a big old layer starting to cut into the sclera. Wow, that's a lot of sclera, huh? All right, So now I got my scissors into the sclera, it gets a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is just simply cut around the eye. You can see there's some fluid seeping out, just be careful of that. Again, if your scissors aren't quite working for cutting around the eye, then try and ask me for new ones. As you work, try and keep the eye upright, simply so we can kind of try and keep all those structures in place. And you want to cut, you can cut all the way around or you can cut most of the way around, but the whole point of this is to try and get the top open, kind of like a treasure chest. And we're just going to pop it open like a treasure chest. Scissors. Sorry about that. Right. So when I'm looking at my eye, I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. We're going to see a couple of structures here. Okay. So as I open up my eye, one of the major structures we can see, and sometimes this structure is going to end up over here. It just kind of depends on how it opens. Let's go ahead and look at the front of the eye first, right? You can almost see this little jelly-like substance. This is going to be your vitreous body, kind of also known by other names within anatomy, but you can just kind of take that out. It is connected through connective tissue to the sides of the eye. Let's go ahead and see if we can kind of pop him out. All right, some of you guys, again, this is going to already be kind of easy to obtain. All right, but you have your vitreous body, and if you guys were to look at it, I'm going to go ahead and take this guy off, okay? It does kind of act like a jelly. All right, now keep in mind this is in the main chamber of your eye. This is not the aqueous humor. I'm going to go ahead and set him aside. All right, so our vitreous body, we still have some left over, but our aqueous humor would be a little bit more towards the front. So you can see from this side right here, that portion, that's your cornea, right? Just kind of visible from the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the top of the eye off so you can kind of see a little bit more towards the front. One of the structures that I'm going to be taking off right now is going to be this almost light colored flesh structure, right? And you can see that's very, very delicate, and it's already falling apart as I'm picking it out of the eye. And this structure continues towards the back of the eye. It's a very thin layer. It covers the back of the eye, and it's going to be our retina, okay? And we can already see it here as well, this light structure. So we'll come back to that. I was just mentioning it went all the way around. If you guys look closely at the eye, you can see the iris surrounding there. For those of you whose vitreous body ended up on the other side, you could actually see an implant of the iris, right? One of the things that I want you guys to do is hear how tough that cornea is. It's so tough because these cows have to protect their eyes. They're always putting their faces right next to grass. And so if you were to take your eye and put it on the dissecting tray and really press down, you can hear a crunch. Right, that's how thick that is. And again, there is a lot of aqueous humor behind there. If you guys wanted to see the iris more carefully, now's your chance to potentially remove the cornea, right? Cut that out and then be able to see that ring of muscle from the other side. And you can see from this angle that the iris is brown. So we have a lot of brown-eyed cows, right? Now, one of the structures that I removed would have sat right behind the iris. I'm going to go ahead and put this back where we would have found it. So you can see not just behind the iris, but right behind that pupil, we would have had our lens. Now, in your eye, the lens would be a lot less clouded. If we had fresh cow's eyes, we could actually see through it and see how it focuses light. For these guys, we cannot, okay? So if we're looking at our lens, one of the cool things about lenses is obviously it's more like a glass-like structure that's going to focus light. But we also see with our lenses that when you guys are newborns, you develop your lenses as a kind of a lump, and then as you grow older, you start to develop layers to your lenses. So if we were to take this and cut it open, we could actually see some of that layers, right? You can actually take your cow's eyes and see how it layers in your hand, right? So little babies typically don't have the greatest vision, but as they grow older, they're building up layers in their lenses. So make sure to play around with that and kind of see those layers of your lens in the marble, okay? Now, if we look back, again, your retina is kind of this light, tan colored layer. All right, now if I were to just kind of move this around, we can see that it's not necessarily solidly attached to the back here. Right, but one of the things we can see is that it is attached at one point. And as I move this around, we can see where this is attached. We talked about how the retina is made up of photoreceptors, and those different wires are going to lead to the back of the eye, right? This is going to lead to your optic nerve, which is one of your cranial nerves, which is going to lead to your brain and deliver that visual information. Remember, at this point, there is going to be not a whole lot of photoreceptors. And so right there is where your blind spot is when we did that blind spot test. Now, you guys are probably wondering about the back of the eye, okay? This is actually a structure that is unique to cows and not to us. We also see it in other things such as cats. Now, the reason for this structure, we call it the tapetum, and it does look pretty cool, really pretty, nice and shiny. We have this bright blue structure. The reason it's shiny is because it reflects light. And so when we had the retina all spread out on this tapetum, okay, when light bounces, when light goes into the eye, it goes through the retina, right? And a lot of that light is going to be absorbed to simplify the matter. However, some of that light, the retina is going to miss. And in order to catch the remaining light, the tapetum is going to reflect it back through the retina. So this tries to catch as much light as possible. Now, for cats, this makes a lot of sense. A lot of cats are nocturnal animals, and so if they're at night, there's not a whole lot of light around, and so if you want to see more, want to capture more light, you want to try and double grab that light, right? Once on the way in and once on the way out. However, with cows, it doesn't make as much sense because cows do function mainly in the daytime. So it might be a residual or a vestigial structure of cows. Just an interesting point. Whenever you take a picture of cats and that flash goes off, a lot of that bright look that makes your cats look kind of demonic has to do with this tapetum, right? So again, we have this optic nerve in the back. Remember that blind spot right there. And when you are done, I would recommend taking off this cornea to look at it a little bit closer. Look around at your vitreous humor, right? But that would be the cow's eye dissection. Once you are done, I'm going to walk around with a disposal bag. You are going to put everything from your cow's eye dissection, all the little tiny bits and pieces, as much as you can possibly get into the cow's eye bag, right? And then further instructions for how to clean up will follow.